Namaste. Welcome to Satsang this evening, or whatever time it is where you are. So I thought I would spend some time answering some questions this evening that have been sent in, because we've got quite a few waiting. So I'll start, I'll open it up for questions live tonight as well in a little while. I'll see how many questions we can get through here that have been emailed in. If you do want to send a question in, if you don't want to ask it live on a session, you can go to the website, by the way, and on the Satsang page, there is a form that you can fill in to send in a question. All these questions will be read out anonymously. So just so you know, you've got that option if you want to. So this first question says, could you please talk about vibration? You have mentioned low vibration manifesting as an issue after a deepening in seeing. I always felt this was a positive thing, but someone suggested this is seeing the issue as bad. I feel everything comes up to be seen, and this doesn't make any issue or emotion wrong. Could you please expand on this? So lower vibrations manifest as an issue after deepening a seeing. So when we've had a seeing, or when we've had a realization, or even when we've understood something deeper than we might have done before, similar thing what we've already seen, and even when none of that has happened, our body and mind is each and every day it is more and more able to operate at a higher frequency. And that really just means that it's living as this truth more and more clearly each day, even if it only seems like a tiny, tiny amount. And as the body and mind, the overall frequency or vibration of our body and mind rises, and more life force energy is flowing through, less of it is tied up in thoughts. It costs us a lot of life force energy to believe these thoughts. So as we are believing less thoughts and coming to see certain things that are not true, then our frequency increases. Not only the amount of energy flowing through the body and mind, but also the frequency of it is higher. So it's flowing faster, it's flowing more of it, and it's higher frequency. So as that happens, naturally anything that's sort of stuck in the meridians, anything that's stuck in the chakra system, anything that's stuck in the physical tissues of the body, lower frequencies is going to come up to kind of say, hey, look at me, you need to look at me. This is something that doesn't fit inside you anymore. And it isn't bad or good, it's just a lower frequency than will now fit inside your body and mind. It doesn't resonate anymore. It's too far out of your vibrational range now. There'll also be some belief showing up as a frequency, as a feeling, an emotion, and maybe showing up as an event in your life as well. So it doesn't mean that anything is going wrong. It might feel like I've lost that clearer seeing I've just had, because now this thing is coming up. But as you said here, it comes up to be seen. It feels like something's going wrong when suddenly we feel a drop in the frequency of the body mind. I was feeling really, really good, and then now I'm feeling this emotion, or this thing's happened in my life. And that's only because it no longer fits inside you. It has to come to the surface to be examined there. So we could call it vibration, we could call it frequency, we could call it just emotion or energy. We could call it karmic patterns or anything really like that. And it's really all the same thing. And it's going to happen if you can kind of get used to the fact that when something is seen clearer, something else is going to have to come up to be released. And that is just the way it goes. It's going to be a deepening of seeing, and then looking at everything that doesn't fit in with that. So if I'm beginning to recognize that I'm not a separate being. Actually, I'm not really what I thought I was. After I've had a deeper seeing of that, it makes sense then that something is going to come up to be examined where I'm still seeing in separation. Excuse me. And that is just part of the process, really. It doesn't mean you've lost what you've seen. It means here's the next step to assimilate, to come to live as what you've seen. And what you've just had revealed to you is going to show up as some lower vibration in some way that we need to look at and release. So I hope that helps. Lower doesn't mean wrong or bad. It just means lower, when we look at it that way. Okay. This next one says, after more than 20 years of seeking, the noumenon was revealed following a series of events which culminated in the complete dissolution of the mind. So if you haven't heard this term before, noumenon, it's really just a word that I've used myself and heard before. And it just means that which is not perceivable by the senses, that which is not a phenomenon. So it's not an object. It is that space in which our beingness, in which all objects appear, the outer objects and the inner objects of thoughts. So noumenon just really means that which is not a phenomenon. So after more than 20 years of seeking, the noumenon was revealed following a series of events which culminated in the complete dissolution of the mind. But there was no sense of self there with a capital S, no conviction that this was the real me. This was devoid of attribute of any kind and featureless, and there was no sense that the gap that seemed to exist between that and the mind that reinstated itself shortly afterwards could be bridged. But you seem to be saying that this sense of separation can be addressed and the gap closed. How does this happen? How is it done? Thank you. So there's been some kind of revelation for you of that, which is not a phenomenon. It's not a thing. It doesn't have any qualities or attributes, as you said. It's not visible, tangible. You can't grasp it with your hands. And yet it is everywhere. It's not actually a form. It's formlessness, noumenon, awareness, whatever we want to call it, or self with a capital S. And when this first happened to me, it was a very similar thing. It didn't feel like anything at all. It felt just like a blank, empty space. It didn't feel, I didn't have an epiphany at that moment that this is really what I am. It was totally opposite to what I expected to find. I'd gone into my self-inquiry for the first time looking for the person that I thought I was, the being that I thought I was. It was living in this body, and found instead this kind of attributeless emptiness, as you said here. So there also, for me, there was no knowing at that time that that's what I really was. And it took me a long time after that to kind of get to that understanding that this is the real me, the noumenon me, rather than a phenomenal idea of myself. And as you said here, there seemed to be a gap between me and it. At the time, there seemed to be a me looking at this attributeless emptiness. And it was only later, as you said, that seemed to close. And then with that, the sense that that is what I really am became prominent and obvious, that this emptiness is my real self. And that out of this emptiness has emerged this kind of phenomenal, imaginary, separate self. So the way that began to occur was for me to really begin to question, as you said here, that this gap can be closed. I'm assuming when you say gap closed, you're really meaning, how do I come to a clear conviction, a certainty without doubt that this is the real me? And for me, this only occurred when I began to question, is there really a me and this emptiness? I'll call it emptiness here, featureless, attributeless emptiness. When I recognized this for the first time, when it sort of presented itself, for want of a better word, there really did seem to be a me and it. And that was emphasized because it seemed to disappear shortly afterwards. As you said, mind came back in and started talking, doing its thing, talking about what I'd seen, talking about how to make that permanent, how to get it back, what I'd done to lose it, and all the things that mind says. And all of this is done, all this talkingness of mind, it is done from the assumption that I'm looking at this emptiness. From my body mind, I'm looking at it. I'm looking as a separate being. There's a me and it. And that's the core thing that you have to question here. When you notice that emptiness, where are you looking at it from? How are you noticing it? Are you looking? You can see, you can notice without eyes, this kind of, you can be aware that there is this emptiness. How are you doing that? And where are you? Are you inside the emptiness as a separate being, outside of it? It feels like we're separate to it. It feels like there's a me and it. And all of our human suffering hangs on that one idea if it's not investigated clearly enough. So this for me became all important. I had to really find out if there was a me and it. All of my seeming existence as a separate being had all hung upon this idea that I was looking at the emptiness. When I really investigated, when I tried to find myself and the emptiness, was there really two? All I found was this emptiness again and again and again, and there was no person in it, or outside of it, or next to it, or underneath it, or behind it, or in front of it, or every which way I looked. There was no separate entity called Helen that was doing the self-inquiry and finding something else, this emptiness. Every single time I looked, I confirmed again and again to myself that there wasn't a me and it. Experientially, I looked, couldn't find me. I just found that. And as we do that, this kind of gap closes, as you said, and it becomes clearer and clearer that I am that. I'm looking from there at my body and mind, not the other way around as it seems. First, it seems I'm looking at the emptiness from my body and mind. And if you want to be doubly sure, check out how you're noticing the emptiness. If it's not perceptible to the senses, how are you recognizing it? You could say, well, I know it's there. I notice it. I'm aware of it. But exactly how can you see something that's invisible? How can you know it's not a thing? Mustn't there be some part of you at least that is the same as this emptiness to recognize it? Your senses and your mind are really good at recognizing forms and the different phenomena and shapes and all of that. How are you recognizing this? And the question that became so important is, am I looking at it or from it? That question changed everything for me. Because if I'm looking at this emptiness, then there's still a me and it. If I don't question that, that assumption will literally be my experience. I will never quite seem to get there and be able to stay there. I'll experience this emptiness, and then it'll just be an experience. It will come and go. And if I am it, it becomes permanent, stable, and effortless. And the phenomena are just kind of going on in front of it, especially thoughts and emotions, or going on inside it, I should say. I hope that helps. And if any of those questions I've suggested really struck a chord there, then grab at it with both hands and, sort of deeply investigate that. Okay, next one. Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for taking questions. I was wondering if you could describe your first experience of knowing or seeing you were one with all there is. I have only had a 3-second experience of this knowing, not even enough of an experience to really know what happened. It was literally just a blip and then gone. Most enlightened beings describe this seminal happening where everything opens, reality is seen, and fear drops away for them because they know at that moment they are one with all there is. And then could anything hurt them as they are all there is? My own experience has been more of a slow trickle of dropping away of beliefs, a seeing of my conditioning that has clouded or veiled reality, lifted away to see more of what is there. Just quiet little epiphanies and seeings along the way. I am not one to meditate in silence, no patience here in this body-mind. And I long to live this opening experience. Could you describe yours so that I can experience vicariously through your seeing of total connection? I know it's happening to me, in capitals, me in capitals, just not yet to this me, lol. Thank you again. Much love. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but my first experience of this was exactly like yours. It wasn't, it was, I think, about half a second or something. And it wasn't blissful. It wasn't even really exceptionally peaceful. It was just, oh, I don't really end anywhere. It was just like that. I don't really end anywhere. And it was just more like, oh, okay. And it was just literally half a second. And after some inquiry, I'd done some inquiry and come to see that after I've worked on seeing that I am this, as we were just talking about before, the next thing that seemed important to investigate then was how big is this emptiness here we're talking about? And I knew, of course, theoretically that it was infinite, that I am infinite. But actually experiencing myself as that and then not being able to find where it stops or being able to find anything that could stop it. Even if I was to put a wall in the middle of this emptiness, a solid wall like the one behind me, will it stop this emptiness? Not so much. Could anything stop it? And it was just kind of a thought realization. I don't end anywhere. There is only me, or there is only this. And it was only really later that it occurred to me that that meant there was nothing other than me. There was nothing different to me, nothing that could hurt me, as you said. And when I looked at this again and again, only then did it become sort of to come through in clearer glimpses, longer. And perhaps in a way that you're not expecting to, which is important, because if we're looking for a big experience, I have to say that most people I've worked with, and myself as well, never really had those big moments. We tend to kind of remember those beings that have had this big explosion, a big sudden and explosive seeing of I am all there is and there's nothing other than me. And as you say, or fear drops away in that moment. Even when I've seen beings have that, it's still, fear will come back in afterwards, because just because I've had this seeing doesn't mean that it's necessarily powerful enough to override all of my beliefs that are still in separation. So I can have this seeing that I am all there is, I am everywhere, infinite. And then the very next moment, I go back to thinking about someone else, and I've divided myself again in that. So that doesn't just stop happening just because I've had this seeing. We have to begin to then look at these beliefs and take them apart. So not very exciting at first, vicariously, to live through that. But as I began to see this again and again and again, it began to come with the stereotypical, more and more explosive feeling. It kind of, every time I saw it, it hit me deeper. And it left me less able to think in separation afterwards. not totally, but enough that it really hurt to do that anymore. That I really had to kind of want to live like this. And little by little, these glimpses went from a couple of seconds to a couple of minutes, and then a couple of hours. And then eventually I realized that there was no point pushing against it when it seemed to disappear. That took me a while to figure that out, because each time it came back, it was stronger, clearer, more obvious. So can you realize the same thing over and over again? Yes, you can. Each time you realize it, it's going to pervade the body and mind deeper and richer and stronger, and it's going to leave more of a lasting effect. And it seems to go because everything that's lower in energy than that has to come up, as we were saying before. So if I want to live permanently, stably, and effortlessly as the one being, the truth that I've seen, I have to examine all my ideas that are remaining in separation. Even the idea that I've got to get to awakening, or there's a me and the emptiness, as we were saying, these ideas even have to be examined to live as that completely. So your condition is going to come up after you see this. And that isn't something going wrong. That is something going really, really, really right. As if mind is finally saying, okay, there's reality, even though it was only half a second or whatever it was. Here's everything that's in the way of you living like this. And of course, once we have a little glimpse, all we want from that point on, really, somewhere inside, is to live like that for the rest of our lives and beyond. And to live like that effortlessly. To not have to keep inquiring all the time. So conditioning is going to come up, but that doesn't mean you've lost it. That doesn't mean you've done something wrong. It's really important to get that. Anything that's stuck and stored in the body mind that's of a lower frequency than the absolute truth is going to come up into the light of your beingness, the awareness, the emptiness, as we're calling it. So it's totally normal what you've described here. And just not entertaining the idea that you've done something wrong when some conditioning comes up after you've seen the truth. And each time you just let that conditioning come up and just watch it. And if you need to question if it's true, the idea, then it's going to come up, it's going to pass through the system and out. And immediately on the back of that is going to be a deeper and clearer seeing of what you've realized. So a deeper and clearer seeing, something comes up to be released. If you allow it to go without identifying best you can, then the next thing that's going to happen is a deepening, automatic, like waves coming up and down the beach. Wave comes in really, really far, you have a deep seeing, and then it recedes a little bit as some conditioning comes up. Next time the wave comes in, it comes further up the beach and then recedes a little bit, but not as far as it did last time, so on and so on. So most beings will experience this slow trickle, understanding after understanding that seem normal and obvious at the time, don't seem amazing. But as you begin to recognize, each time you see, it's coming with more an energetic impact. And it leaves you changed afterwards, doesn't it? Something is changing. And that begins to speed up as you just gently invite these seeings again, not reaching for anything, just gently inviting this to come. What's that like? I'd like to see it again. I'd like to go further into that. It'd be nice if it happened again, but not kind of chasing after it, because you'll only serve to emphasize that it's gone, that you've got to get back to it, something like that. So I hope that helps. Very boring the first time I saw it. It really wasn't, didn't feel anything extra special. It was just a very ordinary moment in that way. It's not what most people want to hear, but nonetheless, it needs to be said, because otherwise we have this expectation, like I did, of I was waiting for this big event. And all the while sneaking up on me without me realizing was this powerful thing going on underneath, little by little, but gathering pace and incrementally So much so that I didn't even realize when I stopped suffering. It was so gradual. I didn't realize that I'd stopped suffering till afterwards, much later. That sounds crazy, right? You think you'd know when you stop suffering, but it was only when something happened in my life and there was no ability to identify with the thoughts and emotions that came up. I was like, that's very, very different. That was weird. And then I looked back and realized it'd been a long time since I suffered. But I didn't actually know that something had fallen away like that because it'd been so gradual. I hope that gives you a little bit of inspiration and hope there. Okay, we'll do 2 more. Hello, Helen. Is it possible that some thoughts arise as guidance and offer important messages to us? How can you let go of thoughts, yet recognize the important messages? Thank you. So yeah, if you're identifying more and more as that emptiness in which the mind is happening, and you're not particularly or less and less each day pushing away thoughts and also not grabbing onto the thoughts that feel good so much, they're just happening inside you, and there's less and less attraction to kind of grab a hold of them. Then when a thought comes along that is important, and that could be some pivotal epiphany or message or sort of guidance from your own self, or it could be something like you're about to lock your keys, and we can't really do that these days, can you? You're going to lock your keys in the car, you forgot to turn the oven off. Something that's important for you to hear, you'll be able to hear it because there isn't the noise going on so much. The mind might still be talking, but it's just talking and it's not talking to you specifically. It's just like TV playing in the room that you're sitting in. It's just got the volume on really, really quiet, and you can hear it talking, but it's not really anything that you need to pay attention to. So when a thought comes in that is helpful to listen to, it will have a higher frequency. It will feel fresh and alive and exciting, something like that. When you have an epiphany, an aha moment or something, there's that kind of fresh and new feeling to it, isn't there? And you'll get that kind of sense to something that you need to listen to. And your body will also respond to it in a positive way. It's almost like when you're not really paying any attention to the mind at all, it's just happening, then anything that it does need to tell you is you're much more able to hear it, rather than what we do most of the time, which is listening to almost every single thought. And then anything that's kind of any wisdom that's trying to get through that gets kind of blocked in that process, or it has to keep coming and coming and coming. The major way to know if something is guidance is you'll find yourself acting on it. Whether you realize that this is guidance or not, you'll find yourself doing it. Your body will move to take some action based on that. So if it's important, it will come back again and again and again, and stronger each time as well. You might have noticed that occurring already in the past, to the point where you just can't ignore it anymore, so even with the noisy mind going on, it will still get through. Okay, and we'll go to the next one. And then, Namaste, Helen. Can you please point me to a direct teaching about how to consistently know myself as more than the small, small, scared, separate self? Many thanks and blessings. So, easiest way is self-inquiry, and on my YouTube channel, Satsang with Helen Hamilton, there is a playlist of core teachings, and I think it's either second or third one in that is a self-inquiry video. There's also a whole self-inquiry playlist on that too, and any one of those will help you come to a direct seeing. But in a nutshell, finding out what you really are and doing that consistently. So asking yourself, what do you find if you temporarily don't count your body, your thoughts, and your emotions? If you don't put them into your self-definition right now, and you want to Anything that you say my, so if it's my mind, my body, my emotions, means it's not me. It's something that belongs to me, but not me. Something I'm using, but isn't me. So just for a moment, we can do this right now. If you don't, when I ask what I am, there's a body, there's emotions, there's thoughts. What else do you find? What else do you actually find in that? When you don't include your body and mind, there's just this emptiness, this space in which the body and mind is sitting right now. If we just imagine for a moment that your body and mind have disappeared, they're not going to do, don't worry, but if you just imagine for a moment that they've disappeared, wouldn't this empty space that they're sitting in be right here, still? And wouldn't it mean then that that must be what you are? The part of you that isn't coming and going, that empty space, doesn't seem like anything amazing, does it? The space around my body right now. It's not ooh or ah, and it doesn't come with bliss or anything like that when you first notice it. But nonetheless, it is the most important thing you'll find if you keep looking. You keep looking at it, curious to, is it just empty space? What really is it actually? Just curious about it, open to see. Just keep doing that. I did that about 100,000 times. That might be a slight exaggeration, but not much. I just kept looking and looking, and all I found when my body and mind were temporarily taken out of the equation, I'm not going to count that as me because it's going to go, was this emptiness, the space in which this body, the chair, and everything else is appearing in. When you take away everything phenomenal, what remains? This in which it's all appearing. If this house I'm sitting in suddenly disappeared, the space that it had been sitting in would still be there, wouldn't it? So is it just inert, empty space, or is it something much more sentient and valuable? So check out those playlists as well. They will really, really help. Okay, so if anybody wants to ask a question, I have more questions here, but got through a few there. So if anybody would like to ask or share anything, feel free to raise your hand here. Saima, yep, wonderful. Whenever you're ready.
Hello.
Hi.
I had a question about a practice that you recommended in one of your talks on when an emotion arises, to ask yourself, like, was it saying to you?
Yeah.
And stuff. And yeah, I've tried many practices like that, but that you recommended, but this one has stuck. Like, it feels more like maybe this is where I am because I can't do it enough for the past couple of days. Like every time a contraction happens or an emotion happens, it's just automatically where I go. And it's helped me look at things I never would have looked at because my instinct was to always run away if I feel envy or whatever and just be like, oh, it's bad. It's like a bad thing to feel. Yeah. But now it's like very neutral. It's like, oh, what does it say? Like, what is this? So my question is, there are still some emotions or reactions that no matter how I look or how long I look or what questions I ask myself, I just feel like stumped. Like, like I'm not sure how to deal with them. At first I was like, it's okay. Like, you're new at this. Of course, sometimes you won't know what to do. But now it's like a couple of days and I'm like, shouldn't there be some kind of progress on this? I'm like, when something, yeah.
What is the feeling that's coming up then? What could you be more specific about what it actually is that's coming?
Like, for example, today I was listening to we are all talks again, and someone was sort of challenging something you were saying. And I had like this, this reaction inside, and I was like, what is that? Like, and I tried to look, it's like, I don't think you're incapable of answering the person. At the same time, I can understand why that person asked that question, but then it's like, why am I having this contraction? And then I'm staying there and I'm not getting any sort of like explanation or whatever intuition that usually comes with other noticings. Like, yeah.
And just sort of gently asking what this was about, did the feeling diminish in itself, or did it stay as strong while you were asking? Did it kind of...
It diminished eventually. Yeah, it diminished, and I was able eventually to just listen to the whole back and forth.
Yeah.
But I had no understanding whatsoever of like what that was.
Then that's totally okay. Some things you'll need to look at again and again. Feelings like fear for me, and guilt, I had to look at again and again. But some things just kind of came up with an intensity, and kind of that is kind of the purpose of one of the purposes of satsang, is to kind of I'm going to go and sit and watch satsang, and I'm just going to relax and get all peaceful, and and then something pushes a button inside, and this kind of energy comes up, and like, that's not what I wanted. But it comes up quite intensely, and sometimes just will disappear again on its own. And you might notice sometimes you don't even need to ask what it is. It's just inviting you to am I willing to feel this in this moment? As you said so beautifully when you started talking, that you've kind of noticed this impulse. Normally I would just push this away.
Yeah.
Like some real sense of, I don't want this, some kind of no to this feeling. And sometimes the only thing it's about is this, am I going to say yes to this time? And it seems to me that you did that if it's diminished and gone away. Some things you'll never find out what they were about. Some things you'll get a clear insight. Oh, that's me feeling unworthy, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But most things in my experience didn't need that much questioning at all. In fact, even just wanting to see what it was about was enough to let it go.
I see. I feel, yeah, I think it was the mind coming back again. Like it was, when it was new, it was discovery, and then after like 3-4 days, it's like, okay, the mind kind of like wants to understand more. And
the purpose of asking a question anyway is sometimes we have to have the belief revealed underneath it, what it's trying to tell me, this feeling. But the reason that questioning works is because I'm moving towards this feeling. If I really am curious about what it is, what it's trying to tell me, it's really just a way of kind of falling back in love with it, and not doing this, isn't it? Not kind of, energetically. All of our pain, all of our negative feelings, and all of our lower vibrations, they come up and we push them down again, and then they come up and we push them down again as a separate being, and we think we're a separate being. So when you start to look like this, things are going to come up that really have just needed you to feel them. I don't have to like it, but I can let my body feel this kind of fiery, passionate, whatever it is, this real kind of intense reaction going on inside.
yeah, and if I could ask one more thing, it seems to be the theme of my evolution or something right now, because that's all every video I'm picking, even the satsang, is kind of like about that. And I'm noticing that there are some things that I know the theory that I need to accept it, and I need to look at it. Like, meditation is not about numbing things down, it's about bringing things in the light. And some things that I'm seeing, or when I'm seeing them, even for the whole day, I feel like I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. I know better by now. Why did I do that? And it makes sense logically that I know better. It makes sense that I shouldn't have told that lie. It was not useful. It was not helpful. Why did I do that? And it's kind of hard to reconcile that with this is what is supposed to happen. Like I'm supposed to just see myself do these things that maybe I used to do, but not be aware of. And now just resting in the scene, there's sort of like a resistance. Like it's like you shouldn't just see it, you should do something.
Yeah. And here is the separate sense of self or mind, whatever we're calling it, that wants to do something. That's its kind of mantra, isn't it? What do I do about this? And when you see your body doing or saying something that you'd rather it didn't, it's okay to have that preference that you don't want. Say if you told a lie and you feel guilty about it afterwards or something, and some part of you is going to analyze that afterwards, isn't it? Why, as you said, why did I do that? And I don't want to do that again. And I should have known better. And I shouldn't be doing that now. And all that kind of analysis. And then our mind is going to say, as you said, what do I do to stop that from happening again? So that whole thought process is coming out of the assumption that you can do something directly about that you have some direct control over what your mouth is going to say in the next moment. And it's just not true in that way. We don't have that kind of direct control. But as I bring my attention to what is true and real more and more often, to the self with a capital S, to the Numenon awareness, then what comes out of my mouth and what my actions are going to be more in line with that. So something happens that you don't want, and mind is going to say a lot of stuff about that, isn't it? But the doingness might be different in this. The doingness might just be, okay, I desire for that to not happen again. What's the fastest way to make that possible is to bring my attention back to what's real. Our mind is always going to want to do something spiritually. It believes itself to be the doer and the decider, and it makes itself into a spiritual doer. Well, if I just meditate more or do more of this, that, and the other, then this thing will stop happening. So the only direct control you have is where your attention is in any moment. So mind might judge and evaluate and try to do that. And you can bring your attention back to the self as soon as possible. Don't judge that judging.
I was wondering, back that we are the subject of the like telling a lie and stuff. I was wondering, what is the role of atonement, for example? Like, I was wrestling with the idea of like, okay, I see it now. I'm back to my center, or however you want to call it. But do I have a responsibility to kind of like be like, no, I didn't. That was a lie, no matter how harmless it was. Or it's just like, now that I see what happened and I'm back to my practice, it's all I can do.
It's all you can do to come back to the self. But in that coming back to the self, what may occur is your mouth may say, I'm sorry, I misled you a bit there. Something might come out of your mouth, or some action might occur that is some kind of apology. And if that needs to happen, it's much more likely to be able to do that without any guilt or anything. So why did I do that? I don't know, but I did. Okay, do I need to apologize? Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. So I'll do that. And I can do that from the self without having to kind of protect my own sense of self. And most of it is very hard to apologize as a separate being, isn't it?
Yes. One thing I noticed yesterday is like most of it wasn't, well, I mean, that's when it happened, was motivated the sense of self-punishment for doing something. And so while the opportunity was there, I was like, I'm just going to trust that coming back to my practice and coming back.
While I want to
will
judge myself, while I want to find something wrong with myself, I'll find something, right? Something I'll say the wrong thing, or I'll snap at someone, or something will happen, won't it? So as I'm more loving with myself, more beginning to understand that I'm doing the best I can in this moment, spiritually too, I'm doing the best I can in this moment, then it's less and less likely to mirror as behaviors that I don't want anymore.
The mere fact that I got the opportunity to even ask you about the situation kind of shows it's like self-evident in itself, of like, oh, this is something in progress, because
I could never even really apologize to anyone until I'd had the deep seeing that I wasn't separate to them, because there was so much kind of, I can't do that. It's like, okay, I really have to. But after that self-protection has gone, that guardedness of the ego, it's easy to just to say, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. And it doesn't have any guilt attached with it or anything. It's just, I made an error, so let me correct it. And it's different, isn't it?
Yeah. Yesterday, I really wished that I could call you and ask you about it immediately. Like when it happened, I was like, oh,
you'll find me. You'll find me inside you, definitely, always there.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Wonderful, lovely, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Anish. Hi.
Hi, Helen. I'm really enjoying the contemplation practice that you've taught us. It's really bringing a lot of relief and openness. I've noticed that during certain contemplations, I can't really phrase a question properly. It's kind of a half question, half unpleasantness, and an emotion kind of mixed together. It's kind of a bundle of energy where I can't really put proper words around.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend I simply, and you touched on this with Saima as well, right? Would you
never hurts to ask it again, does it? Never hurts to go through it again.
Right. So I was wondering what I could do with it. Do I need to spend time phrasing a question, or should I just bring it to the light of the noumenon, the self, and welcome it as you?
Yeah, and sometimes doing that, bringing it into, just a general curiosity about what is this? My body is feeling some kind of energy, and what is it really about? Just a gentle kind of general open question. And just really a deep willingness to look at this and feel this. Doesn't mean you have to enjoy it, of course. We're never going to enjoy feeling some very strong emotional reaction or energetic thing happening, but if a question needs to arise out of that, it will do kind of spontaneously, or somebody else will ask a question on a satsang and you'll, oh yeah, that's a really, somehow, or it'll be in a book or something, the right question will pop up. But as we were saying before, it's really more about where is the question coming from. So I could ask, and this is, I'm not suggesting this is a contemplation question, but can I have a cup of tea is going to work if it's from a really open and curious place. Is this really true? Is it really true that I'm unworthy of awakening? Is not going to work if it's from a closed judgmental place of our mind. So more than a specific question, really, it's more where is it coming from? Because it's an act of love contemplation. I really want to know what is this about? I really don't want to run from it anymore. Some part of me still wants to run, but most of me wants to really embrace this and see where did this come from? What is it about? What's the thing that's perpetuating it? And that's love, isn't it? Wanting to know something and understand it, rather than just kind of this, no, I don't want to go there.
And is it okay if the answer, so to speak, doesn't really come immediately? Because I've noticed that there are these energies that I can feel, which I associate with certain outward conditions, but even when the conditions disappear, I then reassociate this energy with some other new condition, so to speak. So I feel like it's not related to the outside condition. It's just, something in here that needs to be grabbing onto external things to justify itself.
Yeah, mind's trying to explain why you feel the way you feel. And it's saying because of that person or that thing, or, this thing that you did wrong or something like that, isn't it? It's trying to find a reason. And it's clear and clear that it's just something I've believed about myself, and I experience it this way and this way and this way and all these different things. So you'll find that it gets clearer and clearer that my beliefs are kind of coloring every experience I have. So somebody might say something that's perfectly innocent, but if I'm feeling unworthy, I'll be kind of listening. Are they having a go at me? Did they mean it that way? And everything is kind of experienced in that energy, isn't it? Like that. So you just notice more and more it's about, it gets unhooked from what mind says it's about out there. And it's more just the stuff I haven't really looked at and embraced inside, because I wasn't able to as a separate being. Couldn't do that fully. The most I could kind of do is tolerate it or feel it a little bit, but then I can't do that. Yeah.
So you think, look at it and feel it and let it arise and be curious about it.
That is really what, staying as the self or being the awareness, or sometimes that means having your attention on the awareness. Sometimes that means being like the awareness would be. So if some emotion arose, some deep sort of pain from our past or something, what would the awareness do with it? It would just completely let it arise, and it would be totally aware of it without any kind of awareness. Cannot try to change anything, can it? It's just aware. So sometimes being the awareness is, how would the awareness be with this emotion, with this energy, with this thought pattern? It's really just love we're talking about, isn't it? Different names.
It's perfect. Thank you, Helen. Thank
Wonderful.
you again.
Lovely. Gabrielle?
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I do think just in that last sentence, this might have got answered, but I'm going to ask it again anyway, because
Good.
so the thing that's really up at the moment is shame, and it's not a little bit of shame.
It's a full on, yeah.
Yeah, it's full on. And I kind of have been aware, I have looked at it in the past, but I think this week I was in a very silent space, and I dropped into what the mind might reframe as past life experiences. That's all I can kind of sense, how it was being framed in the mind. And I saw a lot of conditioning that had come into this body that had really confused me when I was growing up with my mum, and it's related to kind of mother stuff, but I saw actually it wasn't really that, but it had come in through that. And so the mind really liked that because it made a lot of sense. And since then, it's actually despair. I used to live with a lot of despair,
Yeah.
which has not been present for a long time, but it's despair. It feels evil. I mean, if I was to put I know that's just a label, but it's so intense. And to really feel it, I'm not sure. What am I trying to say? Whether I'm feeling it and re-traumatizing. So I just had a meltdown after work today, but it didn't feel a bad thing. It just felt, that's all I can do in this moment, is to just collapse on the floor and sob. And it hasn't diminished since then, though. It's just as fully present in the body. I don't know if you've got any suggestions.
Was
that feeling it, or what? I mean, just that letting it happen, I would have expected it to diminish a bit.
Yes, but also if there is a lot of it that's been suppressed for a long time, and who knows how many bodies have come and gone where this idea has been experienced and experienced and experienced, and it's come into this body mind, and I've experienced it in this body mind as a child and then an adult again and again and again. And as I'm feeling it, it might be, I remember allowing some fear. It took 3 or 4 days in the end. It was just kind of full
Yeah.
on. I went to bed with it, woke up with it, went to bed. But there was a sense of it just needs to happen. And I was questioning, because it was always about safety and security,
Yeah.
and a deep sense of despair at one point that I would never be able to get what I need to feel safe. Which at that point I was awakening is going to save me, the me,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
feeling this way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, maybe because I think maybe what's happened in the past, I felt it, but just a little tip of the iceberg, and then have maybe questioned a bit. The questioning I find isn't that helpful with this intensity, because it goes back into mind, wanting to fix it and sort it, and then it seems to
just take
lock
the
it in.
words off the question and just notice what, and that sounds strange, notice what your body's feeling. Really get in touch with your body and what it's feeling right now. And everyone can do this, right, if you want to. And just kind of have a question mark about it, just a curiosity, rather than, don't even need a specific question sometimes. Just, what actually is this? Just what is this? What's happening? Just to kind of check in with your body and how it's feeling. What is it actually feeling? Because one of the things I realized that as a awakening got deeper for me was that I'd never really felt it. I'd always kind of just allowed it or tolerated it and never really sort of welcomed it, because I had this idea that to welcome it, I had to like it or something like that. And when I really realized I don't have to like it, but can I actually, if I'm pushing this away at all, even a little bit, it's like me denying it the right to exist.
Yeah.
And this feeling is me. This feeling is me showing up as this feeling, this energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it feels terrible because I'm actually denying my right to exist. I'm actually saying I can't
Yes.
exist.
Yes.
Because this emotion is me. It is me, isn't it? Right now, it's a part of me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful, because I think what had come up a couple of days ago was, wow, that is so separate from me.
Yeah.
Or I've divided myself off so much from this, even in previous so-called being with it. I've still said it's other than. So I got that recognition. So that's helpful. I'm denying a part of existence. I have been.
I can show up any which way, right? And at some point I have to let the ways catch up with me. I've showed up before as shame or despair or something. And the slightest bit of separation will prolong it. And even I had this whole things to do as a separate being when I thought I was being the self, capital S. Okay, I'm going to allow this emotion, I'm going to be with it, I'm going to sit with it. All of it was with this kind of subtle way of managing it, so I don't have to feel it fully. Just
that's what I've been doing.
Separation, and it's normal, of course.
Of
course, we don't want to feel this, but it is here right now. It is what is now. Am I going to honor it now? Here's a fresh opportunity now. As the self doesn't have any good or bad about it, or even wanted or not wanted. It just is. I'm showing up as this despair right now. And if I push it away even a smidgen, I'm saying it should not be. And that is like a real negation of, it's like anti-life, isn't it? Anti-self. And we feel it in the body. It feels terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, it does feel really terrible. Yeah, no, that's really helpful.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. Something shifted there doing that. Yeah. Lovely. It's always about how much we're pushing it away. And it's happening now because you're maturing, you're awakening. These things are coming up for us because we're able to embrace it more this time than we did last time.
Yeah, because the thought process was, for God's sake,
Not you again.
not you again. And how many times do I have to, how much does the seeing have to deepen? And then I was looking in your book thinking, well, am I near the end yet? Will I be near the
If you
end?
notice, the thought stream that happens when an emotion arises is a very subtle or sometimes very overt way of not having to feel it completely, not being intimate with this feeling. If I think about, why is it here again? Why isn't it going yet? What have I done wrong? Then it's a very subtle way for me to kind of not fully engage with it. And
Yeah, because I can feel the distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
my
that's
mind
lovely.
is so good at finding ways to do
Oh
that.
God,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. Thank you, Helen.
Wonderful. Lovely. Okay, that seems like a really good place to leave it for this evening. It seems like we've had variations on a theme there. Seems to be what needed to happen tonight, both in the email questions and your questions here live. So thank you for participating in that, and hopefully you see the general emergence of the self as the self is not so much the absence of these emotions and these energies, but more how we're being with them, how we are being when they arise. What do we do with them? More and more there is this urge to turn towards them. Even that is a kind of phenomenal thing, but just to allow them, turn towards them in terms of what we want to do, and more just to kind of embracing and allowing of it. And I could only really do that as the self. I could only really let something be when it wasn't separate to me, because it wasn't so scary then. Lovely. So thank you. Namaste. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye for now.